I took the caretaker position at Camp Pinewood because I needed $4,000 by March, and nowhere else was hiring in November. The director, Mrs. Halloran, met me at the camp gates on a Tuesday afternoon when the temperature hovered just above freezing. She was 70, maybe older, with hands that shook when she sorted through the key ring. "November through February," she said. "Check in by radio every 3 days. Supply drop on the 15th of each month at the main gate. Don't miss it." The camp spread across 40 acres of pine forest on the western shore of Crane Lake. 23 cabins, a dining hall, 2 bathhouses, an equipment shed, a boathouse, and the director's lodge where I would stay. Everything was painted dark green except for the white trim that had gone gray. Mrs. Halloran walked me through the lodge first. 2 rooms downstairs, 3 up, all with furniture covered in sheets. The radio sat on the kitchen counter, a heavy black unit with a handset and numbered dials. "Channel 7 only," she said. 3 check-ins per week. Wednesday, Friday, Sunday at exactly 6 p.m. Don't miss a check-in. She showed me the propane tanks behind the lodge, the backup generator in the shed, the winter supplies stacked in the pantry. 40 pounds of rice, 30 cans of beans, 20 of soup, dried pasta, salt, flour, sugar, coffee. Matches in boxes, batteries sorted by size, a medical kit with bandages and pills, firewood stacked under a tarp, everything accounted for and labeled. "The lake freezes by mid-December," she said. "It'll look solid, it's not. Stay off it." We walked the property line. She pointed out boundary markers, explained the septic system, showed me which breaker controlled which building. The woods pressed close on 3 sides. The lake stretched away to the east, gray water under gray sky. No other camps visible on the far shore, just unbroken forest. At 4:30 we returned to the lodge. Mrs. Halloran pulled a folded paper from her coat pocket and set it on the kitchen table. "These are the rules," she said. "Read them. Follow them. Don't improvise." I unfolded the paper. 9 rules, handwritten in blue ink, numbered 1 through 9. "I've been running this camp 42 years, she said. "Never lost a winter caretaker who followed the rules. Read them now." I read while she poured herself water from the tap. 1. Lock all cabin doors before sunset. Check every lock. Count 23. 2. Between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m., stay inside the lodge. Do not open the door for any reason. Do not look out the windows after 10 p.m. 3. If you hear voices calling your name between sunset and sunrise, do not answer. Do not acknowledge them. 4. The boathouse door must remain closed and locked at all times. Do not enter the boathouse. 5. If you see lights moving through the woods at night, close the curtains and turn off all indoor lights until the moving lights disappear. 6. Animal sounds are fine. Human sounds from the woods at night are not. If you hear human sounds, follow Rule 5. 7. Check cabin 19 every morning at 8 a.m. If the door is unlocked, lock it. Do not enter. Report it on your next radio check-in. 8. The dining hall kitchen must be visited once per day between noon and 3 p.m. Verify that the back door is locked. Do not visit the kitchen after 3 p.m. 9. If you see someone who looks like a camp counselor or a child during winter, do not approach them. Return to the lodge immediately and stay inside until morning. I read through them twice. Mrs. Halloran watched me. "Questions?" she said. "What happens if I break one?" "Don't break one." "But what?" "You'll follow them because you're smart and you need the money." She pulled on her gloves. "Radio check-ins, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, 6 p.m. exactly. Don't be late, don't miss one." She left. I heard her truck on the gravel road, the sound fading into the trees. By 5:15 the sun was setting. I had 45 minutes. I found the checklist clipboard in the lodge closet. 23 cabins marked on a grid. I put on my coat and started at cabin 1, the closest to the lodge. The door was already locked. I tested the handle twice, then marked the clipboard. Cabin 2, locked. Cabin 3, locked. I worked through them methodically, following the dirt paths between buildings, checking each handle, marking each box. Cabin 19 sat at the far northwest corner of the property, separated from the others by 50 yards of pine trees. The door was locked. I marked it and moved on. By cabin 23, the sun had touched the horizon. I walked back to the lodge quickly, not running but not wasting time. I locked myself inside at 5:47, 13 minutes to spare. The lodge felt bigger with me alone in it. I checked the propane heater, adjusted the thermostat to 60 degrees, turned on the kitchen light. The windows showed darkening trees and the black mirror of the lake. I pulled all the curtains closed before 6 p.m., then made coffee and heated a can of soup. At 6:02, someone knocked on the lodge door. 3 solid knocks. I was at the kitchen sink. I froze with the spoon halfway to my mouth. Another 3 knocks. I set the bowl down quietly. The rules said don't open the door. It didn't say don't listen. I stayed still. After a minute, the knocking stopped. I heard nothing else. No footsteps, no voice. Just silence and the hum of the heater. I ate my soup cold. At 8 p.m., I heard footsteps on the gravel outside, circling the lodge. Steady, even footsteps, boots on stone. They went around the building once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th circuit, they stopped at the back door. The handle rattled. I sat at the kitchen table and didn't move. The handle rattled again, then went still. At 9:30, I heard singing from the woods. A woman's voice, clear and high, singing something I didn't recognize. It went on for 4 minutes by my watch, then stopped. I kept the curtains closed and the lights off except for one lamp in the kitchen. At 10:15, I heard my name. David. It came from outside the front door. A man's voice, calm and even. David, open up. I didn't answer. David, it's cold out here. I sat at the table and counted seconds. After 60 seconds, the voice stopped. I heard footsteps moving away. I didn't look out the window. Nothing else happened that night. I slept in the downstairs bedroom with the door closed and a chair wedged under the handle. Habit from the last apartment. In the morning, the lodge was exactly as I'd left it. No marks on the doors, no tracks in the dirt. I made coffee and checked the supply list. At 8 a.m., I walked to cabin 19. The door was unlocked. I tested the handle 3 times. It turned easily. I didn't open the door. I relocked it carefully, checking twice that it caught. Back at the lodge, I marked it on the clipboard with a red pen. Radio check-in tonight. I'd report it then. The rest of the day I spent on maintenance. I cleared leaves from the gutters of cabins 1 through 5, checked the propane lines, inventoried the equipment shed. Rakes, shovels, axes, coils of rope, tarps folded and stacked, everything labeled. I made a list of what was there and compared it to the list in the shed. 2 items missing, a tarp and a coil of rope. I marked it down. The equipment shed had a strange quality to it. 20 feet by 12 feet, metal walls, concrete floor, everything hung on hooks or stacked on shelves with labels written in faded marker. But the dimensions felt wrong. When I stood in the center and looked at the back wall, it seemed farther away than it should be. I measured it with my boots. Heel to toe, 17 paces from door to back wall. I measured the outside, 14 paces. I measured 3 more times, same result, 3 paces difference. I marked it in my notebook but didn't mention it on the radio check-in. Some things you just accept. At 1 p.m., I walked to the dining hall. It was the largest building, sitting at the center of camp with the cabins radiating outward. The main doors were locked. I had keys for those and for the kitchen entrance in the back. The kitchen was industrial. Stainless steel counters, a 6-burner stove, 2 refrigerators unplugged and empty, shelves of pots and plates covered in dust. The back door was locked. I tested it, marked my clipboard, and left. At 4:30, I started locking cabins. Same route as yesterday. When I reached cabin 19 at 5:20, the door was locked. I checked it twice. It hadn't been unlocked since I locked it that morning. I marked the clipboard and finished the route. By 5:50, I was inside the lodge with the doors locked and the curtains drawn. At 6 p.m. exactly, I turned on the radio. It hissed and crackled. I pressed the transmit button. "This is Camp Pinewood checking in. Over." Static for 5 seconds. Then Mrs. Halloran's voice, thin and distant. "Copy, Pinewood. Report. Over. All secure. Cabin 19 was unlocked this morning, relocked at 8 a.m. No other issues. Over. Acknowledged. That's normal for winter. Just relock it. Next check-in Friday. Over. Copy. Over and out." The radio went silent. I turned it off and made dinner. That night, the knocking started at 7 p.m. It came from different sides of the lodge. Front door, back door, west window, east window. Never the same place twice in a row. I ignored it. At 9 p.m., I heard voices in the woods, multiple voices talking in low tones I couldn't make out. I kept the curtains closed and the lights off. At 11:30, I saw the lights. I was in bed when I noticed the glow through the curtain edges. I got up carefully and looked through a gap without pulling the fabric aside. Lights in the woods. 5 or 6 of them moving between the trees. They looked like flashlights, but too bright, too steady. They moved slowly, weaving through the pines, coming closer to the lodge. I closed the curtain gap and turned off the bedroom lamp. In the dark, I waited. The lights came closer. I could see the glow under the bedroom door from the kitchen. They were right outside now, shining through the windows. The lodge was silent except for the heater. After 10 minutes, the lights began to move away. I watched the glow fade from under the door. When it was completely dark, I stayed in bed with my eyes open until I heard birds at dawn. Wednesday, I checked cabin 19 at 8 a.m. Locked. Thursday, locked. Friday morning, unlocked. I relocked it and reported it on the 6 p.m. check-in. Acknowledged, Mrs. Halloran said. Continue routine. Over. The pattern held. Some mornings cabin 19 was unlocked. Most mornings it stayed locked. I never looked inside. The rule was clear. I just tested the handle, relocked it if needed, marked the clipboard, and walked back to the lodge. The nights developed their own patterns too. Knocking every evening between 7 and 9. Voices calling my name 3 or 4 times a week, always after 10 p.m. Footsteps circling the lodge, always stopping at a door but never trying to force it. The moving lights came twice more in the first 3 weeks, always between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m., always disappearing before dawn. I developed my own patterns in response. Every morning at 7 a.m., I made coffee and checked the propane gauge. Every morning at 8 a.m., I walked to cabin 19. Every afternoon between noon and 3 p.m., I checked the dining hall kitchen. Every evening at 4:30, I started locking cabins, working the same route, finishing by 5:50. Every night at 6 p.m., I did radio check-ins on schedule. Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. Never late, never missed. The routine became armor. As long as I followed it, I was safe. On November 28th, 3 weeks into the job, I found something new. I was checking cabin 7 during the evening rounds when I noticed scratches on the door. 4 parallel lines gouged into the wood, fresh enough that splinters still clung to the grooves. The marks started at shoulder height and dragged down to the handle. Something with claws, something that had been here recently. I checked the other cabins. Cabin 3 had similar marks, and cabin 15, always 4 lines, always on the door. I marked it in my notebook, but didn't include it in the Friday check-in. Mrs. Halloran had said to report anomalies with cabin 19. She hadn't said anything about the others. That night, the knocking was different. It came in sets of 4. 4 knocks, pause, 4 knocks, pause. It moved around the lodge in a pattern: front door, east window, back door, west window, then back to the front. 4 complete circuits. Then it stopped. In the silence afterward, I heard breathing outside my bedroom window. Slow, deep breaths, in and out, steady as a metronome. I lay in bed and counted. 97 breaths. Then it stopped. I heard footsteps moving away through the snow, crunching with each step, fading into the distance. On December 4th, I saw someone during the day. I was walking from cabin 12 to cabin 13 at 4:15 p.m., just starting the evening lockup. A child stood between 2 cabins about 30 yards away. A girl, maybe 8 years old, wearing a yellow raincoat. She was facing away from me, standing completely still. I stopped walking. Rule 9. Do not approach. I turned and walked quickly back to the lodge, not looking behind me. I went inside, locked the door, and closed the curtains, even though the sun hadn't set. I stayed inside the rest of the evening. The next morning, when I did the cabin rounds, there was nothing unusual. No footprints, no disturbed ground where the girl had been standing. The incident shook me more than the night sounds. The nights I could rationalize. Wind, animals, acoustic tricks in the cold air. But the girl had been there in daylight, solid and real. I had seen the yellow raincoat clearly, seen her small frame, seen the way she stood with her arms at her sides. I started carrying a camera during the day rounds, a digital camera from the equipment shed, old but functional. I told myself it was for documentation. Really, I wanted proof that I wasn't losing my mind. On December 7th, I saw her again. This time she was standing at the edge of the frozen lake at 3 p.m. Same yellow raincoat, same position. Facing away, arms at her sides. I was 100 yards away. I raised the camera and took 3 photos. When I looked up from the view screen, she was gone. That night, I reviewed the photos on the camera's small screen. 3 images of the lake and trees. No girl, no yellow raincoat, just empty white ice and gray sky. I deleted the photos and put the camera back in the shed. On December 10th, I walked to cabin 19 at 8 a.m. and found the door not just unlocked but standing open 6 inches. I stood on the path looking at it. Cold air moved past me into the cabin. I could see a slice of the interior, wooden floor, the edge of a bunk bed, morning light through a window. Nothing else. I stepped forward and pushed the door closed. It took more force than it should have. The hinges were stiff. When it shut, I locked it carefully, testing the handle 4 times. I marked it in red on the clipboard. That night during check-in, I reported it. The door was open, I said, not just unlocked, open, over. Static, then how far open, over? 6 inches, maybe 7, over. Did you see inside? Over. Only from the path, I didn't enter, over. Good, that's good, just keep locking it, it's fine, over. What's in cabin 19, over? Long pause. Static hissed. Nothing important, old equipment, just keep it locked. Check in Sunday, over and out. The radio went dead before I could respond. Sunday at 8 a.m., cabin 19 was locked. Monday it was unlocked. Tuesday locked. Wednesday unlocked. Thursday open 4 inches. I closed it and locked it and reported it Friday evening. Normal winter activity, Mrs. Halloran said. You're doing fine. Supply drop on the 15th. Don't miss it. Over. December 15th was a Monday. I walked to the main gate at 10 a.m. A green pickup truck idled outside the fence with its bed full of cardboard boxes. A man in a brown coat got out, saw me, and nodded. He didn't speak. He passed boxes over the fence one at a time, 6 boxes total. Canned goods, batteries, propane canisters, coffee, matches, rice. I signed a clipboard he handed me, and he drove away. I carried the boxes to the lodge in 3 trips. While I was putting supplies away in the pantry, I heard an engine, not a truck, a boat motor. I went to the kitchen window and opened the curtain. The lake was partially frozen, ice forming near the shore but open water in the middle. A A small motorboat was moving along the far shore, maybe 300 yards out. One person in it. I couldn't see details. The boat moved north parallel to the shore, then turned west and disappeared behind the tree line. The sound faded. I closed the curtain. I stood in the kitchen trying to make sense of it. The temperature had been below freezing for 2 weeks. The lake should have been solid by now, but I'd seen open water clearly, and a boat in December. That evening during the 4:30 cabin rounds, I detoured to the lakeshore. I wanted to see the ice up close. The path to the water was overgrown but walkable. I pushed through bare branches and came out on a narrow beach of rocks and frozen sand. The lake stretched away in front of me. Solid ice, white and unbroken from shore to shore, no open water anywhere. I walked along the beach for 50 yards in each direction. Ice everywhere, thick ice that groaned and cracked in the cold. I had seen open water 6 hours ago, had heard a boat motor, had watched it move across the surface. I walked back to the lodge and finished locking the cabins. I didn't mention the boat in my radio check-in that night. That night, the knocking on the lodge door was louder and more insistent. It went on for 20 minutes, moving from door to door, window to window. I sat in the kitchen with the lights off and didn't respond. When it finally stopped, I heard footsteps on the roof. Slow, heavy footsteps walking from one end of the lodge to the other. They stopped above the kitchen. Something scraped against the shingles. Then silence. In the morning, there were no marks on the roof. I checked with binoculars from the ground. Nothing disturbed. Cabin 19 was unlocked. The temperature dropped the week before Christmas, single digits at night, teens during the day. The lake froze completely, white ice stretching shore to shore. I stayed off it. The rule was clear. On December 20th, I was in the dining hall kitchen at 1:30 p.m., checking the back door as required. It was locked. I marked the clipboard and turned to leave. Someone knocked on the back door from outside. I stopped. My hand was on the clipboard. The knock came again. 3 solid raps. I didn't turn around. The rules said verify the back door between noon and 3 p.m. It didn't say anything about knocking, but Rule 3 said don't answer voices calling my name. Did that apply to knocking? A third set of knocks, harder. I walked out of the kitchen through the dining hall and left through the front entrance. I didn't look back. I returned to the lodge and locked myself inside. It was only 2 p.m., but I wasn't going back out. I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook and reviewed the rules. I had been following them exactly for 7 weeks. But were there gaps? Things the rules didn't cover? Rule 2 said stay inside between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. What about 6:01 a.m.? What about 8:59 p.m.? Rule 3 said don't answer voices calling my name. But knocking wasn't a voice. Was it covered by the rule or not? Rule 5 said close curtains if I saw moving lights. But what if I heard them first? What if they were already outside before I noticed? I spent 2 hours going through the rules line by line, looking for ambiguities, trying to think through every scenario. The rules were precise, but they weren't complete. There were gaps, small spaces between the words where something could slip through. I made my own list of clarifications, things I would do to stay safe even if the rules didn't explicitly require them. Stay inside from 8:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m., giving myself margin on both sides. Treat any unexpected sound as a potential voice. Don't answer, don't acknowledge. Check curtains at sunset every day. Make sure they're fully closed before dark. Never open a door after dark for any reason, even emergencies. If something seems wrong, return to the lodge immediately. I folded the list and put it in my pocket. It helped. Having my own rules alongside the official ones, a second layer of protection. That night I heard singing again. The same woman's voice from the first week, but closer. It sounded like it was coming from just outside the lodge, circling slowly. The song had no words I could understand. It went on for 8 minutes, then stopped. At midnight, I heard my name again. David. The voice came from directly outside my bedroom window. A woman's voice this time, soft and sad. David, please. I stayed in bed with my eyes on the ceiling. David, I'm cold. I counted to 60. The voice stopped. I heard footsteps moving away through the snow. I didn't look out the window. Christmas came and went without ceremony. I made coffee and heated soup and locked cabins and checked the dining hall kitchen and radioed in on schedule. Cabin 19 was unlocked 3 times that week. Once the door was open again, this time a full foot. I could see inside clearly. 2 bunk beds, a small table, a window with the curtain pulled back. A yellow raincoat hung on a hook by the door. I pushed the door closed and locked it and walked back to the lodge. I didn't mention the raincoat on my radio check-in. New Year's Eve was a Friday. I did my radio check-in at 6 p.m. as required. Happy New Year, Mrs. Halloran said. Her voice sounded tired. You're doing well. 1 more month, over. Copy that, over. Stay inside tonight, more activity on holidays. Don't open the door no matter what you hear, over. Understood, over and out. I made dinner and sat in the dark kitchen. At 7 p.m. the knocking started. At 8 it got louder. At 9 it became pounding, hard enough to rattle the windows. At 10 p.m. I heard voices, multiple voices, men and women and children, all calling my name in unison. They circled the Aine lodge, calling and calling, the sound rising and falling. At 11 p.m. the lights came, dozens of them. I saw the glow through every curtain. The lodge was surrounded. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark and waited. The lights pressed close, their glow seeping through gaps in the curtains, under the doors, through the heating vents. The voices kept calling. David, David, David. At midnight exactly, everything stopped. The lights vanished, the voices cut off mid-word. The silence was total, not even wind in the trees. I sat at the table for another hour before going to bed. In the morning, nothing was disturbed. No tracks in the snow, no marks on the doors. Cabin 19 was locked. January was colder. The second week brought a storm that dropped 8 inches of snow and knocked out power to the lodge for 6 hours. I used the backup generator as instructed, rationing fuel. The heater kept running. I stayed inside for 3 days until the roads were clear enough for me to check the cabins. When I finally went out on the 4th day, January 11th, the camp looked different. The snow had drifted against the cabins, burying some doors up to the handles. The paths between buildings were gone, covered in smooth white that showed no tracks. Nothing had moved out here for 3 days. No animals, no people, nothing. I started at cabin 1 and worked my way through the route. The snow made it slow. I had to dig out some doors before I could check the locks. Cabin 7 locked, cabin 8 locked, cabin 12 locked. When I reached cabin 19, I stopped 30 feet away. The cabin had no snow on the roof. Every other building was covered in 8 inches of white. Cabin 19's roof was completely bare, dark shingles visible, as if it had been brushed clean. The door stood open 6 inches. Footprints led from the woods to the door, small footprints, child-sized, and larger footprints, adult-sized. Both sets of tracks came from the west, approached the cabin and went inside. No tracks came back out. I stood on the path and counted to 100. At 53, I heard something inside the cabin. A scraping sound, wood on wood. Then silence. I approached the cabin slowly. At 10 feet, I could see through the gap in the door. The interior was dark. The bunk beds were visible, the table, the window. The yellow raincoat still hung on its hook. The scraping sound came again. This time I could place it. Someone was moving the table, dragging it across the floor. I pulled the door closed. It resisted as if someone was holding it from the inside. I pulled harder. The door swung shut with a bang. I locked it, tested the handle 3 times, and walked away quickly. Behind me, I heard 4 knocks on the inside of the cabin door. On January 14th, the day before the monthly supply drop, I checked cabin 19 at 8 a.m. and found it not just open but with footprints in the snow leading inside. Small footprints, child-sized. I stood on the path looking at them. The tracks came from the woods to the west, approached the cabin directly, and went through the open door. No tracks came back out. I didn't enter. I pulled the door closed, locked it, and walked back to the lodge. I radioed in that evening. Cabin 19 had tracks going in, I said. Small tracks, child-sized. Over. Long pause. Did you enter? Over. No, over. Good. Did you see anyone? Over. No. Over. Another pause. Lock it. Don't worry about the tracks. You're almost done. 2 more weeks. Over. Copy. Over and out. The next day I walked to the main gate for the supply drop. The same green pickup, the same man in the brown coat. 6 boxes. He handed them over without speaking. When I signed the clipboard, he finally spoke. You doing okay up there? I'm fine, I said. He nodded slowly. 2 weeks left. You can make it. What happened to the last caretaker? He climbed back into his truck. He didn't follow the rules. He drove away before I could ask anything else. That night I heard a boat motor again. The lake was frozen solid, had been for weeks. No boat could move on it. But I heard the motor clearly, moving along the ice, the sound circling the camp slowly. It went on for 20 minutes. I didn't look out the windows. On January 20th, I was in the dining hall kitchen at 2 p.m., checking the back door. It was locked. I marked the clipboard and turned to leave. The back door opened. I stopped. I hadn't heard a key, hadn't heard the lock turn. The door just swung open slowly, revealing the woods beyond. Snow on the ground, trees standing dark against gray sky. Nothing else. I stood perfectly still. The door stayed open, cold air poured in. After 30 seconds, I walked out through the dining hall front entrance, not looking back. I returned to the lodge and didn't leave again that day. The final 10 days were the worst. The knocking came every night, lasting hours. The voices called constantly. The lights appeared every night, sometimes staying until dawn. On January 22nd, I saw the girl in the yellow raincoat standing on the frozen lake at noon, facing the lodge. I closed the curtains immediately and didn't look out again until the next morning. She was gone. Cabin 19 was unlocked or open every single morning. The footprints in the snow multiplied. Small tracks, larger tracks, tracks that circled the cabin and stopped at the door. I closed it and locked it every morning without fail. On January 28th, 3 days before the end, I heard someone inside the lodge. It was 3 a.m. I was in bed. Footsteps in the kitchen, slow and deliberate. I hadn't heard the door open, the windows were locked. I stayed in bed with the chair wedged under my bedroom door and listened. The footsteps moved through the kitchen into the living room, up the stairs. They walked through the second-floor rooms one by one. Above my head, directly overhead, they stopped. They stayed there for 5 minutes. Then they moved back downstairs and stopped outside my bedroom door. The door handle turned. The chair held. The handle turned again, rattling. Then it stopped. The footsteps moved away. I heard the front door open and close. In the morning, the lodge was empty. The front door was locked from the inside. No tracks in the snow. Cabin 19 stood wide open. I walked to it slowly. The door was open all the way, swinging slightly in the wind. I could see the entire interior. 2 bunk beds, a table, a window, a yellow raincoat on a hook, and on the floor in the center of the room, a piece of paper. I didn't enter. I used a long stick to drag the paper out onto the path. It was a note, handwritten in blue ink. Thank you for following the rules. 2 more days. I picked up the note, closed the cabin door, and locked it. I walked back to the lodge and burned the note in the wood stove. January 30th was my last day. Mrs. Halloran arrived at 2 p.m. in her truck. I met her at the lodge with my bag packed. "You made it?" she said. "I followed the rules." "Good." She handed me an envelope. Cash, $4,800. Extra for making it to the end. We walked through the property one last time. She checked the lodge, the supply inventory, the equipment shed. Everything was in order. When we reached cabin 19, she tested the door. Locked. "This one always needs watching," she said. "What's in there?" She looked at me. "Nothing now. Used to be a girl drowned in the lake back in '87. Counselor's daughter, 8 years old. Went out on the ice in March when it was melting. We pulled her out, but she was gone. Her mother worked here that summer. Stayed in cabin 19, lost her mind by August. Walked into the lake wearing the girl's raincoat. She turned away from the cabin and started walking back to the truck. They're still here," she said. "Mother and daughter, looking for each other. The rules keep them contained, keep them from getting confused about who's who." "And the others? The lights, the voices?" "The lake takes people, always has. Winter's when they're loudest." She climbed into her truck. "Next caretaker arrives tomorrow. You left him the rules?" I pulled the folded paper from my pocket and handed it to her. I'd copied them exactly, word for word. "Good," she said. "He'll follow them or he won't. Either way, someone needs to be here." She drove away. I walked down to the main gate with my bag and waited for the shuttle to town. Behind me, the camp sat quiet under gray sky. Smoke from the lodge chimney rose straight up in still air. Cabin 19 was locked. I didn't look back.